Blog Talk Radio.
Greetings, context of white supremacy, Gus T. Renegade, and our guest, Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Mr. Fuller, are you with us?
I'm here.
Outstanding. I was recently speaking with a so-called black female victim of white supremacy, and she said that the more she had been studying racism, white supremacy, and she's heard some of your lectures, she began to see black males as pathetic, and she began to better understand the powerlessness of being a black male in a system of white supremacy. What would your view on that be, black females or just black people in general viewing one another as pathetic under the system of white supremacy?
Well, what I wrote in my book was the description of all of the non-white people on the planet under the system of white supremacy, and the word that would fit all of the victims of racism would be pitiful, meaning the word of being pitied. That's which pathetic would mean approximately the same, I imagine. But that's an accurate description of people who have been rendered completely helpless and dependent by a hostile force, have become a pitiful people, a people worthy of being pitied and who need help. That would fit all of the people who are subject to the system. His system that is hostile to them, a system that also is incorrect. In other words, it's not a justice system. It's okay for people to be subject to someone. I don't like to use the word subject. I mean, I would say in a cooperative sense. All people are kind of dependent, you might say. That's the best word. It's okay for people to be dependent on someone as long as the people that they are dependent on are doing the correct and the just thing. This is not the case in the system of white supremacy. The system of white supremacy is a hostile system. So anybody who is subject to that system is a victim of hostility. And if they are dependent on that system, they're in a pretty pitiful state. And that is the condition. And all of the evidence shows this.
Wow. So you think for a non-white person who's going to be honest with themselves, just looking at the evidence, that they would accept or acknowledge, recognize the fact that all non-white people, males and females, are in a pathetic, pitiful state as long as the system of white supremacy exists?
Yes, that's written in the textbook for victims of racism. That is an accurate description. Pitiful, primitive, stupid, and are silly. That's the general description. In one of those categories, or all of them in conglomerate. Some people are not stupid, they're not silly, but all come under the pitiful category. Some people are primitive. Some people are more primitive than others, meaning in a prime stage of trying to evolve from where they are to where they should be. Pitiful, primitive, stupid, and are silly. That's the description of all victims of racism. They fall in one or more of those categories, generally speaking. But all fit the pitiful description, worthy of being pitied.
I think along the same vein, when we spoke before, we were talking about the fact that most non-white people do not understand that white people control all of the activities amongst people worldwide. They dominate those activities. And one of the things that I've noticed is that non-white people will quickly jump on another non-white person for not responding to racism, white supremacy, in the way that they feel that person should have. And I feel that that demonstrates a lack of understanding of racism, white supremacy, that white supremacy means if you are not white, you're going to be in a position to observe non-white people being mistreated, and you're not going to be able to do anything about it. Do you think that's an accurate statement?
No, there's something that can be done about it. Anything that can be put apart or built up by people, anything that can be put together by people can be taken apart by people. But you have to know how it's put together.
Right.
In order to do it in a manner that makes sense. And if you're not aware that it is together and how it works, and this is why the statement in the front of the textbook for victims of racism is, if you do not understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. And that's going to be the result. So the result is what you're looking at is confusion. Now you're looking at refined versions of confusion all over the place. And people who are confused, confusion is sort of like the preface to a lot of other things that shouldn't be happening, like anger, frustration. When you're confused, you get angry, you get frustrated, and then you just lash out. And you lash out at whoever happens to be standing near you that you perceive as being weaker than you. That's sort of a normal reaction among all confused organisms.
Do you think thus far the non-white people, no non-white person can say that they have demonstrated that they know the correct procedure for dealing with white people when they practice racism, white supremacy?
Oh, on a one-on-one basis, under some instances that has happened. I mean, people know how to deal with it, and it becomes codified to a degree. But there's nothing that is orchestrated on a long-term basis and on a consistent basis. That's why what is needed is a counter-racist code. The racists go by a code. It's very precise in all 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. It just about covers everything that people are engaged in from one moment to the next, all over the planet, any time of day or night, engaging in one or more of those activities, and all of these activities are interactive, meaning what happens in politics affects what happens in religion. What happens in religion affects what happens in sex. What happens in sex affects what happens in economics. What happens in economics affects what will happen in the fields of education and entertainment, and so on and so on. So the racists have figured out how to dominate the non-white people in all of these areas, and they have a code for doing so for each one of the categories. They have a way of going about doing everything that they do. The victims of the system of racism don't have any such thing that corresponds in power or even in the understanding of what is going on. So they just jump up and do anything. When something happens in the field of education, they just don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. They don't know what the goals are. Nothing. They're all dependent on consulting the white supremacists and say, what do we do, about our situation? What are we supposed to be learning? And what for? For what ultimate goal? And where should we have a school? And what should we teach in the school? And in order to accomplish what? So people who are completely subjugated are just kind of wandering around bumping into each other. And then they start fighting because they did bump into each other. And this is sort of the pattern. And it can be expected until the people become codified, meaning now when this happens in the field of economics, our response will be this and this and this and this, and have it very well precision orchestrated. And when this happens in the field of education, in fact, in the field of education, which is just a process of learning things that you ought to know, we will be teaching this. For what reason? Because of this reason and that reason, the other reason, and the things that we say and the things that we do, because everything in the universe is a matter of saying and doing. You have to know what to say under certain circumstances in order to get a precise result. And you have to know what to do in order to get a precise result. You know, just like when the tire gets flat on the car, there's a precise thing that you do in order to compensate for that, for the tire being flat. Otherwise, if you try to run on a flat tire, you're not going to get the best results, and you're going to get further damage because the vehicle is not made to do that. And it's the same with everything else in the universe. You have a precise way of addressing everything, precise way of curing diseases, a precise way of repairing something that is in need of repair, a precise way of compensating for things being out of balance. And under the system of racism, everything is out of balance because they throw it out of balance deliberately where their victims are concerned. Keep them off balance. An example of that in economics is keep them moving, dislocation. Don't let them get too set in where they are if where they are is of benefit to them. Let them go somewhere and have a house or something or a business or whatever, and it begins to build up and build up and build up over a period of time. They set up a routine that becomes successful and seems to be off and working, and something you can depend on, rely on, and embellish and improve on. Don't let them get in this kind of situation, because then that's bad for the business of white supremacy. So keep them moving, as they say in the old Western movies. Keep them squatters on the move. Don't let them get stable. If they get stable, it'll be harder to deal with. So keep them frustrated. Keep them confused. Do this at all times in all areas of activity. Whether it's economics, whether it's education, keep them confused. In the field of religion, keep them confused. In the field of sex, keep them confused and make them more confused so that they don't even know the difference between a male and a female.
Since you brought that up, I think a lot of people, or I suspect quite a few people, became aware of the dress code that was recently put into place at Morehouse. And one of the things they addressed was the cross-dress. They made rules to say that was not acceptable at Morehouse campus. And I just thought about the sexual confusion of getting black men. They showed, when they talked about this, they showed black males in high heels on the campus. I just was curious about your views in terms of how successful the sexual confusion has been on victims of white supremacy, particularly black males.
Well, one way that you confuse people is a very simple formula, and that is you demasculinize males and you defeminize females, and you have them switch roles. You take the females and make them masculine, and take the males and make them feminine, and you got mass confusion right there, big time. You got complete chaos, and it's almost like a huge joke, and it's happening right before your eyes. But people don't know the significance of that. They say that, well, this is just another form of doing whatever. They don't understand that this is a major form of causing confusion and disaster. You already have males, and you already have females. Why do you need to switch roles when you already have a male person? That's like, you're going to turn a tree into a rock and turn a rock into a tree. You already got trees. You already have rocks. Well, you need to switch for, particularly when the tree doesn't have the features of a rock, or the rock doesn't have the features of a tree. And this is exactly what they're doing. They're saying everything is everything. That there's no difference between anything when it comes to some things that they designate that there's no difference. And then they play that out. And they almost scream in laughter at how, for the most part, the most intelligent of black people buy into that. And just nod, just like, robots. And say, yes, that makes sense when it makes no sense at all. And that's who they start with, the most intelligent, because that's how you control people. You get a very articulate black person to say, oh, yes, a male is a female. After all, he has nipples on his chest. Yes, that's a sure thing. That's a guarantee. And say it with great passion. And a female, well, everything's the same. What's the difference? You treat everything the same. Why make a difference between, how you address everything? Everything's the same anyway. A lamppost is the same as a wolf. That's the kind of logic that the white supremacists will sit up with their feet on the desk and say, let's run this past black people, because they're so incredibly stupid. Let's see if they'll buy into it. Let's see if they'll buy into the most stupid thing that you can ever come up with. And say it with a straight face and repeat it often enough and see if they'll buy it, because it usually works. And sure enough, no matter what it is, whether it's drugs, whatever it is, all they do is just repeat it often enough. And the next thing you know, the most learned of black people will start nodding in unison. And the white supremacists say, niggers forever.
Wow. So you in fact, you had said several times that you felt like the racist white supremacists were going to have black males in dresses. You had said that many years ago. So
I said that in 1972.
Mm-hmm.
And people looked at me and said, no, there are some black people who are like that, and we know that, cross-dressers and all like that. It's always been. Say, but that's not going to become the general rule. And I said, oh, yeah, you think not? And they said, well, Fuller's gone off the deep end, he gets carried away sometimes with his reasoning and with his, and I said, well, lots of things that they have said would not happen, have happened, all down through the history of the system of white supremacy. I said they're moving into the refined stage where the price of doing the business of white supremacy is getting more difficult, which means they're going to come up with more and more ideas that even when black people are well fed and well housed, they will be like prima donna dogs. Because, after all, the white supremacists feed their dogs well. And take care of them, pet them.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right. Dress them up sometimes in fancy clothing. Have show dogs, but they're still dogs. Lots of bling-bling for the dog. but the dog is still a dog. Doesn't have a mind that goes into the realm of what you call a human being. Stay away from that. Do not let a nigger become a human being, ever. And you can do this by messing with his mind, so that he doesn't have any humane characteristics at all. You might come across as a pedigreed animal who's very docile, who's very cooperative, who's highly trained. But that's what a nigger's supposed to be. Don't let him have a mind of his own where he thinks about anything constructive. As long as it's non-constructive, oh yeah, that's what it's all about when it comes to those people. Don't let them get off and start doing anything constructive, particularly on their own, that's not under your tutelage. Because then they become dangerous. Dangerous to what? To the system of white supremacy, my ego system. Because that's what it is. It's an ego system. Holier than thou. I'm supreme. Nobody's supposed to threaten my supremacy. I'm supposed to be the world God, the God of this section of the universe. I have eminent domain. I'm a white supremacist over all creatures in the form of people or whatever, and all things. For what purpose? Makes me feel good. That's the purpose. I like feeling powerful.
Wow, again, Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., I'm just curious because you talked about being able to see in the early 70s that the racist white supremacists were going to do a lot of sexual confusion, particularly on black males. Dr. Welsing, she was on the program a couple weeks ago, and she said she felt like the film Superfly that came out in the early 70s, that did a lot to condition non-white people into doing non-constructive things. Did you observe anything with that particular film coming out around the same time you made your observation about the sexual confusion?
No, but I kind of figured it was coming, and just the styles and whatnot, the tight pants, no pockets. You don't need pockets, I mean, if you're not going to be carrying anything. And, the flare trousers and whatnot with the high heels and the great big pink hat. Mm-hmm. And, and the long hair like we still have. I mean, we go and get weaves and whatnot for no apparent reason. Spend big money, hour after hour. And what message is that supposed to be sending? See, when you do things with your hair, you're sending a message. Mm-hmm. Now, black people, we just do things. We don't have a reason for doing anything that we do, except, we'll say if someone asks us, we'll say it's a style. A style for what? Even styles have purposes. So what are you doing? What are you spending all this time for? I mean, and they even call it an industry. What's industrious about it? I mean, it's not producing anything. It's not putting food on the table, anything. All it's doing is greasing up the pillows. And it's not anything new. The white supremacists have always said, don't let black people try to put anything in their heads, but have them worrying about their hair all the time. Make that a priority. Call it a hair industry. And we'll even fund a few of them, and make them famous, and allow them to become famous, fooling with black people's hair. Because, hair is just hair, like fingernails and whatnot. If you just want to sit around and polish them all day, look at them, hold them up to the mirror, and can't touch anything on account of your fingernails might lose their sheen or something. So therefore, you can't do anything. I mean, you can't do anything with your hands. It's like wearing handcuffs now. On account of you're going to ruin your fingernails. And so you think they'll go for this? Oh, black people will go for anything. Anything that we throw on them, they'll go for it. They'll grab it in a minute. Particularly if it doesn't make. That's the way their minds work. They're wired that way. They're born that way. They can't think outside of that. And we buy into it. And it needs to be codified to the opposite, where we ask questions about everything. Everything new that suddenly appears on the horizon, we should stop and say, wait a minute, where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? Whose idea is this? Is this anything that we need? That's the key question. Is this anything that we need? Is this anything that I need, that I have to have? Because if it isn't, it came from someone else, it's not your idea. And even if it is your idea, you should say, is this anything that I need? It's a mechanical thing. It's a codified thing. It's logic. Everything is based on logic, cause and effect. What is this going to do for me? Is it going to do anything for me? Is it going to do anything for anybody that is of constructive value? Or is it just another stupid activity that we are famous for? That's all we have to ask. Every time anybody proposes anything, what's going to be the effect? That's what you ask. Oh, yeah, it sounds like this, that, and the other, but what's going to be the effect? And is that effect going to be constructive? And if so, how? What is it going to produce that's going to solve a problem? Because everything should be about problem solving. Now, what problem is this going to solve? This proposal that we're having this meeting for. Everybody crowding around, taking the podium. What problem is this going to solve? Can anybody answer that? Because we've got thousands of problems out here. Now, is this which one of these problems is it going to solve? One or two problems of any kind. Name it. And if nobody can answer, take that off of the itinerary for that meeting.
Yeah, I have had several white people on the program this week, and 2 or 3 of them have alleged that they do work against racism. And one in particular, he pointed out he does a lot of work in informing people about the ancient civilizations in Africa and how the Ethiopians invented coffee, and they had governments and politicians and things in the Sudan and other areas of Africa. And I said, how does that solve any problems for non-white people or improve their quality of life? And he said he didn't have any evidence that, it did that. It solved any problems or improved their lives anyway. And I said, well, I don't really see a value to doing that. I would much rather be doing concrete things that are going to help solve problems for me, as opposed to just learning about, people that I'm alleged to be related to who lived 500 years ago. And he said, oh, no. This is important. This is, it helps white people see non-white people as people who should not be mistreated because they have value. Have you seen these white people going out and saying that the way to fight against racism is to learn about the pyramids and the ancient history of Africa?
Well, you said somebody said that. Well, people can say a lot of things, but those questions should be asked. and you ask him how, And if you say, well, this is what it does, and then you say, well, if that's going to be the result, then you don't need to tell me as a victim. Go tell the white people that you say they're going to be inspired now to change their ways toward black people. And if it works, fine. If it doesn't, then you got your evidence that it doesn't work. So go tell white people about the great Ethiopian empires and see if it changes their behavior. Because I have no reason to believe that that will do it.
Why do you say that?
Because the white supremacists have studied a lot about black people and what they used to do. In fact, they had to study them while they were doing it. That's how they were able to conquer them, by finding their weaknesses, which history has proven they had a bunch of them. And where's the evidence of this? They're in the shape that they're in now. Who cares anything about Ethiopians or Somalians or the people in Timbuktu? Who wants to go there that's got any sense? Everybody's trying to get out. So whatever was happening there, it came to naught. It didn't sustain itself. So there were glaring weaknesses in whatever it was, or it would not have disappeared and become to nothing, which is what all those places are. Occupied by permanent beggars and people who are at odds even with each other.
Wow, yeah. He did not have any evidence. This particular white person, he did not have any evidence that white people would no longer practice racism as a result of learning about what non-white people have done. He said,
according to the code, it is very significant that that white person was talking to a non-white person about this solution.
Mm-hmm.
That alone tells you something. Why are you talking to me? Since you say this works, why aren't you talking to the people who are going to make it work? I can't make it work. You say that it'll work, but you're telling the incorrect person. What am I supposed to do with this information? You take it to the white people. You're right there next door to them. They're right there in the house with you. You tell them that and see what their reactions will be. Don't tell me. That's not helping.
Well, I know he did say he has talked to non-white people, and he said that he feels it's important that non-white people get this information so that they can have a sense of pride, that their ancestors have accomplished great things, and done governments, and have contributed a lot to civilization. What would your view on that be?
The view would be that, first of all, there's no such thing as a civilization, and as far as recorded history is concerned, never has been. Let's get that straight. No civilizations have ever existed. Civilized people do not mistreat each other, period. And they help people who need help the most. It's called justice. Nobody's recorded history shows this in any significant manner. All the history that's being glorified is history of dissension, conflict, building up to tear down. That's not civilized. So forget the civilizations. Now, that's number one. Number two, you don't have to have a precedent in order to do the correct thing. All you have to do is know what the correct thing is to do. It doesn't have to be done before. Everything has a first time. So it's a myth about in order for something to be done, It had to have been done before. The universe was created. It hadn't been done before. So justice, if it ever did exist, and if it didn't exist, doesn't matter. It can be done because it has been a concept and still is a concept. So when something is a concept, it can be done right from scratch because the materials are here to do it. People can't create anything, never have anyway. But you can arrange things that have been created, and you can arrange a thing called justice, meaning guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now that's the definition that I coined for the term justice, since there is no legal or even a functional definition for justice that's spelled out. In a compensatory fashion, I spelled it out because that's what compensation means, making up for what's missing. What was missing was a functional definition for the word justice. 2 parts, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help, and in the process, you guarantee that no person is mistreated. It's never been seriously tried, as far as anybody knows. The concept has been around like forever. People give it lip service, but it's a very simple formula. 10 people in a room, you just simply ask, okay, is anybody in here who's being mistreated? And if so, by whom? Under what circumstances? So you take care of that with all 10 people, starting with the person who's being harmed the most. That's the law of compensation. Then you say, now, is anybody in here who needs constructive help? Everybody holds up their hand. All 10 people in the room say, yes, everybody in here needs help. Say, okay, let's do it in an orderly manner. Let's start with the person who needs the most constructive help and the most of it. And that can be easily figured out in a room of 10 people. You just start with the person that needs the most help. You'll say, well, there's Susie there. Susie's list of things is longer than anybody else's, of the things that she needs constructive help on. So we start with that with Susie. Everybody pitches in and helps Susie. And then, because Susie's got 30 things on her list. Okay, then who's next? Well, the next person has 22. So that person is next. And so on, until you finally get to the 10th person who has 8. That's the procedure. Start with the person that needs the most help, all over the world. And then you'll produce, theoretically, that thing that we say that we all would like to see, the thing called peace. Because justice plus correctness, using truth to get there, got to have the truth, will theoretically equal peace. Peace has never been established. Nowhere. Everything is in conflict. And the white supremacists more than anybody are the masters of that conflict. As the way the world is right now. It is the duty of every person, white and non-white, to change that. But you have to have that focus. The first order of business, in order to get to that thing we call peace and justice and correctness, using truth to get there. First order of business is to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. Why? Because that's the most powerful system for manipulating people on the planet. You can't get nothing done if you could start talking about civilization without changing the system of white supremacy, eradicating it rather, and replacing it with a system of justice. First order of business. And then once you get justice, which is balance between people, treating people correctly, then you can get the other things done in the universe. All these environmental issues and all like that, that's correctness. Make things correct. Because if people are out of balance, they're going to throw everything else out of balance. And that's what people are doing. Just dump trash into the rivers, you know. Kill the fish and everything else is worth anything. Just dump. Carelessly. Unthinking. Don't care. Anything you happen to have in your hand, I mean, candy wrapper or whatever it is, I mean, just throw it down wherever you are. Leave it for somebody else to come along and pick it up if somebody else is going to, which they're not. That's correctness. Don't do it in the first place. Don't pollute things. Don't throw things out of balance any more than they already are. But if people are out of balance with each other, they're going to throw everything else out of balance. Because destruction becomes fun. More fun than construction. That's the kind of mentality that has been spread, particularly among the victims of racism, because racism itself is destructive. You build up things just enough to destroy the things that you make. You manufacture paper in order to make books, and then you put in print in those books things that are destructive, teaching people how to be destructive. You did something constructive by putting the book together, by putting the paper together, putting the paper, the pages and whatnot. It took some skill to do that. But then when you print something on the paper, it's all about glorifying murder, praising Alexander the Great, and Julius Caesar, and Nero, and Caligula, and the Corleones, and talk about how wonderful that nonsense is. And then slap on it the label civilization, the history of Greek civilization. What civilization? In any area of activity. They say, well, they were great artists. Yes, making statues of people who are half dog and half man, half horse, and half person. And what you make statues of, you're trying to do that stuff. So you have a male person copulating with a dog or a horse, trying to come up with some type of half horse, half person, and carving a statue, spending many, many hours, days, nights, carving a statue of a freak, and then worshiping it, and then calling it a civilization. Nothing civilized about that. It's mass insanity.
Again, Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., you talked about the way violence is worshipped in culture of racism, white supremacy, and you mentioned the Corleones and just different so-called gangster films and that sort of thing. Greek civilization, they have a ton of what they call Greek civilization. They have a ton of movies and books about that as well. I was thinking in the system of white supremacy, I feel that there are just a lot of ways that violence, particularly violence against non-white people, is something that is viewed all the time, and just it's a normal thing to see violence against non-white people being celebrated. Is that something that you've observed a lot of as well?
Well, the record shows it. Even when they make movies,
mm-hmm.
they have what they call the Oscar that they present to people
mm-hmm.
for having performed well on what they call the screen. Now, look at the Oscar itself. It's carrying a sword. People probably don't notice that. What's the sword for? I mean, the movie might not even be about any kind of violence or anything like that. But if they're going to get an Oscar for it, the Oscar has a sword. Many statues are made of people carrying swords or holding swords. All about killing. You make a symbol of an eagle. Got olive branches in one claw, arrows in another. You notice these things. And then why have the symbol of an eagle representing anything that people do? Why the eagle? The eagle is a bird of prey. An eagle preys on the weak. Probably forced into doing that by changing the environment. All we know, animals could have been very tame, all animals, including lions. But they became carnivorous, meaning they started feeding on their own. When there's a shortage of something. Strongest animal that's alive now, one of them, the biggest, is the elephant. The elephant eats grass. Doesn't eat other animals. The elephant feeds off of grass and drinks water. The elephant likes water, plenty of water and plenty of grain in the form of grass, fiber. You can't get an elephant to try to eat a goat. But your most vicious animals are meat eaters. The hyena, the lion, the tiger. Probably got that way by people throwing things out of balance.
You feel like the conduct of people on the planet has that much of an impact, so that when people are not in balance, not in a system of justice, that it has that much of an...
It has an impact on everything else. When you start disregarding another person and the value of another person, you'll start disregarding just about everything around you. Everything begins to lose value in your mind. And you become a destructive entity. You become a poisonous organism. And the white supremacists believe in it. They glorify it. They praise it, being destructive. Use great technology, making movies, and put them on huge screens to teach young people. Huge cartoons, how to fight, be destructive. Go looking for something to be destructive of. Let's go to Mars and fight the green people. Go to Mars and fight the green people for what? Because they're there, that's why. And they have color. Old Flash Garden movies. Let's go to Mars and fight the clay people. Clay people? Yes, the mud people. Clay is dark. Well, why fight them? They're not here. They're not bothering you. Well, we'll go fight them because they're there. We'll make a great effort to get there. We'll take our woman along with us so that she can entice them, and then we'll have an excuse to attack them. Just like we do the niggers here.
I was, and I'm in total agreement that I see a lot of evidence that suspected racists put a lot of time and energy into producing films that seem to glorify the abuse of non-white people. I was thinking, I cannot really think of films that show a non-white person mistreating a white person. I cannot think of very many of those at all. And I was thinking that was most likely in the system of white supremacy. They would not want non-white people to think that violence is one way they could respond to racism, white supremacy. I don't know what your view is on that. Have you seen,
well, if they do, I mean, it makes it a contest. In other words, they don't mind doing that. It's the same way that they do with an animal. They train animals to be vicious. They train a pit bull to be vicious. And then they have the pit bull running through the neighborhood attacking people, and that gives everybody a reason to attack the pit bull. See, and they like a contest. In fact, that's part of the Nazi ideology on the part of some, according to some books. It has been said by some people who were called Nazis that after all of the conflicts have been settled and the Nazis have been made powerful all over the world, you give a little breathing space and let somebody else build themselves up and help them to build themselves up so you have somebody to fight again. In other words, just keep fighting. The movie Patton depicted a scene by George C. Scott where General Patton is reported to have said, that all the movie started out that way. All good Americans love the sting of battle.
Wow. Wow.
Be a warrior. Glorify war. Make an excuse to start a war. And then get yourself bathed in it. War. Bloodshed. Tearing up things. Shooting at people and have people shoot at you. That's fun. That's what it's all about. And then call it civilization. How mad can you get? How insane can you get?
I know in your in the code book that you authored, you included your suggestions on how counter-racist warfare can be carried out by the victims of racism, white supremacy. did you feel that non-white people at least should think about, or you made your suggestions that they should at least think about or consider whether or not counter-violence is a strategy that they might implement to combat the system of racism, white supremacy?
Well, war and counter-war is the 9th area of activity in the book, and it outlines that. And that's the only way that all wars should be fought, on an individual basis. In other words, the individual who is hurt the most. Just like the concept of justice, the person who needs help the most gets the most constructive help. And the person who is being hurt the most and nobody's doing anything about it, that person has a choice. I won't say it's a duty, but that is an option to compensate by attacking, counterattacking, because the attack has already been made on the person. The person is being mistreated, and nobody's coming to the person's aid. So that person as an individual, not as a so-called group, I mean, that's not justice. That's not done in, it's the person that's hurting. That's the person. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, as they say.
Yes, sir.
So that person, in the form of maximum emergency compensatory action, I used to call it justice, but I thought that was going a little too far by saying that you're actually producing justice. You don't know whether you are or not, but that's the step toward it. So it'd be more accurate to say maximum emergency compensatory action. That's action with the intent of producing justice, however. But to be explicit, it's an action with that intent, because the intent is always to bring about balance between people. And the best way to make a message between people who are dedicated to doing harm, and nothing will stop them, is to do harm to the person who is doing harm. Now, if you're going to kill them in order to do that, then in order to prove your motive for doing it, rather than just duplicating what they have done, is that you also kill yourself. That's one of the features of maximum emergency. You tell the person, say, well, I can't stop you from doing what you're doing because you're going to continue to do it. And so I don't know how to stop you and then survive because you have made me dependent on you. So let's do it this way. Let's say you keep mistreating me. Nothing will come to my rescue. And you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it. And I can't get any help from anybody. And you keep doing it, and it looks like it's just going to keep on this way. There's no relief. There's no place I can go. I can't get away from you. I just have to be in this condition. So, since this is a situation that should not exist, I will take what skills that I have, and on a certain day, at a certain hour, and certain circumstances, whatever it is I can figure out in a compensatory fashion, I will take you away from here. In other words, I will kill you. And then I will kill myself to make the point that this situation should not exist in the first place. You should not have driven me to this point. But since you did, now I don't want anybody punishing me for having done it, but I did do it. So I compensate. I don't want to make a killer out of somebody else. So I killed myself because I killed you. And I killed you because you should be dead on account of your actions toward me. So we both go at the same time, same day. And that will be at least a lesson to everybody else who's walking around here, who think that this is the way everything should be, that people should just go on mistreating people. And if it happens enough over a period of time, people will eventually get the message. This mistreating people does not work. It simply doesn't work. Because when I mistreat you, it means that I am going to be the result of my mistreatment, my own demise, my own extinction. I can't do it. Maybe people will get that message. That's the procedure. That's the message that's supposed to be sent under maximum emergency. But a person is only supposed to do it when they can't go any further, when they don't have any options, when they can't get away, when there's nothing else that they can do except just keep taking it, keep taking it, keep taking it. Nobody's supposed to do that. But it's up to the person, the individual person, because different people have different temperaments. Different people can stand different levels of punishment. But that's the only form of so-called violence that's allowed other than direct self-defense, which in a projected way that is. Maximum emergency is self-defense. But it's defense when you can no longer defend yourself. But this is the only type of counter-violence that's allowed, where you take the initiative to make into extinction the person who is slowly making you worthless for having been here in the first place, by just mistreating you, and making themselves comfortable by mistreating you. That's justice in its purest form when it comes to counter-violence against the violence that's being inflicted. Nobody, logically speaking, who has the correct intentions can argue against that. In the code book, the textbook for victims of racism, that whole chapter, that whole segment, that whole area of activity is covered under war, counter-war. War is a system of white supremacy. It's the most potent form of war. If you're going to counter that system directly, toe-to-toe, you don't do it by dropping bombs on cities, killing babies and all this type of stuff, or just kill anybody. No. You go after the individuals, specifically, who are doing the most damage once you find out who they are. And without warning, because they've already had their warning by having done what they have been doing. And you have already asked them to stop doing what they are doing. But being what they are, they continue to do it because they think that's their mission for existence in this planet. And there's no logical reason for them to think that. No constructive reason. So when you can't talk to them, after you try to talk to them, that's compensatory. Try to talk to them. But if you as an individual, not the fellow next door, decide, I'm tired of talking. I can't take it anymore. They're slowly strangling me. They're making me into a worthless organism. And they're enjoying it. And I'm not taking it anymore. As of tomorrow or the next day or whenever I decide, you're your own general and your own private, your own corporal, your own politician, in your own army, an army of one. You take them out of this world and you go with them. Doesn't get any better than that. And then the people who hear about it can evaluate it for what it is and say, well, looks like a message was sent. Somebody was being mistreated. And they stopped the mistreatment from the person who was inflicting the mistreatment. And they paid the full price for having done so by terminating themselves as they did it. Now, what do we who have survived and witnessed this have to say? Well, what we should say is, we don't want to have to do that, do we? To each other on this wonderful planet that we have been given. This is not the way to run this business of running this planet. So maybe we all ought to change. How about that? That's the message. Very clear message. A very tolerant message. A very logical message. A very just message.
There are white people and non-white people who are familiar with your concept of maximum emergency compensatory action, and they said, "Well, I don't see how that works against racism, white supremacy, for a non-white person to use counter-violence against a system of violence." How would you explain whether or not this is a constructive act?
They don't have to do it. It's very democratic. They can keep doing what they're doing. This is for the person who says, I just can't go any further. There is such a thing as the person who, without saying anything to anybody, because you're not supposed to say anything to anybody. That's a characteristic of it. This is strictly between you and yourself and whatever creator you say you have. This is why in the maximum emergency you don't tell anybody that you're going to do it. You don't have an accomplice. If you tell somebody, then you have an accomplice. You have somebody who's helping you do it. Just by listening to you say that you're going to do it. You don't tell anybody. You tell yourself. This whole argument is with yourself. And it's not going to involve anybody except yourself and the person or the persons, because it might not be just one person. You may have earmarked maybe 500 people. But nobody else should be involved in this. This is strictly your process. And you explain it to your own creator after you have done it. Because you don't explain it to anybody else. It's you who feels the pain. Now, if you don't feel that kind of pain, you don't argue for it or against it. As far as actually doing it. I mean, if you either do it or you don't. This is a doing thing. This comes under doing. Everything is about saying or doing. Now, people can say what they want to about it, because you don't even give it that label if you're going to do it. You don't put a label on it at all. That's how it's described in the code book. But it really doesn't have a label for the person who is actually doing it. Except if it does have that label, only that person knows it, because that person did it and didn't tell anybody. That's one of the characteristics of it. And the people who hear about it, the incident or incidents, actually, according to the code, are supposed to just think about it. You're not even supposed to discuss it in depth, except to say that something happened. But why it happened, the details of it, you really don't know, so it's nothing to say. But you certainly think about it. And you think about when it's going to happen again and again and again and again and again. Because when you get enough people doing it, it's going to make people think. And that's how it should be. Because then when you're around people, I tend to believe that according to logic, people will have a tendency, well, since this is going to be the mode of war and counter-war from here on in, no more ballistic missiles and all the rest of this hardware where people can show off on huge battlefields. Everything is going to be individualized. Maybe we should settle in for a procedure of helping the person that needs help the most. Because that person who's not being helped, or the person who is being deliberately harmed, that's the person who's going to terminate me. Because that's the new rules now. If I'm the person who is doing it, or taking part in doing it, that person who is in need of the most help, the way things are going to be done now is going to be highly individualized and without warning. At a certain day and a certain hour, that person is coming after me. And without saying anything, it's going to terminate me, and then they're going to terminate themselves. Now, is this the kind of world that I want to live in? I don't think so. Because now there's not no glory in this. It's not no fun. And there's no defense against it. None. That's why I thought it up in the first place.
What about the non-white people and white people who would say that if non-white people followed through on that suggestion and resorted to counter-war, that it would not work against racism, white supremacy. It would only further agitate the racist white supremacists and make them want to practice racism even more, continue the system of white supremacy.
That's up to them. But that still doesn't discount that process. Because the person who is hurting still must have that option, regardless of what happens. That's why it's called maximum emergency compensatory action. If the white supremacists want to say, well, hey, we're just going to get rougher with what we do, get rougher. But the reaction is going to be the same. The person who is hurting the most, at a certain point, they can't take it. And that's the way it's going to go. You can't watch him all the time. Because at a certain point, that's all he's got in his mind. He doesn't want to go any further. He doesn't want to go any further in taking it anymore. You're inflicting more of what you have been inflicting than you have before on account of what somebody else did. Now you're going to take it out on another victim and further victimize that victim more than you have done before. So when that victim reaches that point, the victim does the same thing. And on and on and on. It's the kind of rules you set. You live with that rule that you set. That's why it's called maximum emergency. It's an emergency, and it's maximum, meaning I'm going as far as I can go. I take it as long as I can. You have this crackdown on account of what some person did down the block. And I say, I'm not going to do that. And you say, it doesn't make any difference whether you do it or not. You might do it, or you might be thinking about doing it, or because he did it, I'm going to take it out on you. So you take it out on me until I can't stand it anymore. And then I do the same thing. What other option do I have? That's the way it works. The law of compensation, you get what you put out. We all do. We all should. That's the lesson. It should be sent in no uncertain terms. If we wind up depopulating the planet, so what? Because that's what you're doing anyway.
I didn't want to eat up too much of your morning, but I did want to ask the code book that you authored, the United independent compensatory code system concept. And you talked about it just on the program today, that non-white people are independent. You're an army of one. You are going it alone against racism, white supremacy. And I hear victims of white supremacy speak about being loyal to other non-white people, other victims of white supremacy. And my view is that I don't think a non-white person can be loyal to another victim of white supremacy as long as white supremacy exists. What is your view on that?
Well, we're all subjects, and just like I give the analogy of the slave ship. You're just chained together at the bottom of a slave ship. So what does loyalty mean under those circumstances? It's a word. I mean, you can have compassion and all like that, but what can you do with your compassion? You're chained to another person, and you're totally dependent on the captain of the ship. So I can say I'm loyal to the person, but what does that mean? No, I'd be loyal to an idea, the idea of justice, that I'm able to be. I'm chained. I'm completely helpless. I can't help the person next to me because I can't help myself. I'm completely dependent on the captain. Feeding time, sleep time, condition time. That's what being subject means, being a victim means. Now the captain can come down and say, now I'm going to give you just enough food to sustain you. But on account of the way this person next to you has been acting, I'm not going to give them anything. And I say, well, I'll share my food with them. Well, if you're going to share your food with them, I'm not going to give you any. Now, how are you going to deal with that? See, now one of you is going to starve anyway, or both of you. And you say, well, I've come this far, so that means I don't want to starve. So, okay, I'll tell you what I'll do, Captain. You just give him my food, and I'll starve. Say, yeah, well, one of you can starve, Say, but then after I feed him, I'm going to give him a better quality of cornbread, and I'm going to feed you slop. Because after all, I got an investment in both of you. Say, now, both of you want to die. Say, well, I can take the loss. Or I will take it, even though that's not my druthers. Because, after all, dead niggas are of no value to me. If I wanted dead niggas, I wouldn't have dragged you this far. At great expense to myself, in great anguish, fighting these storms and whatnot, and putting up with these insolent sailors. But it's a business. It's the business I have chosen. I got to make it to port with healthy niggas so I can bring a good price. And I'll force feed you if it comes down to it. But I'll feed you the bare minimum. It won't be cornbread, it'll be slop. It'll be the leftovers from what the sailors eat up on the deck.
Which you just said the concept of not being loyal to a person, but being loyal to an idea. It would be fantastic if you could really explain that in detail so that victims of white supremacy get an understanding of what it means to be loyal to an idea.
Oh, you're loyal to that concept of justice. That's why I say I give it a definition so we have something to aim at. We never had a definition. Guarantee that no person is mistreated. No person what? The person that's around you. You don't mistreat anybody around you. See, which is something we need to stop doing. Just ask yourself, is this mistreatment or not? And then you don't do it. And you minimize that conflict by minimizing unnecessary contact. That's how to start. That's the formula for starting, because we are used to mistreating each other. So the first thing we do to get out of that, what we are used to, we don't make contact with each other except for a constructive reason. All the non-white people, there are people who are killed at Christmas parties. We don't know how to interact with each other. So since we can't learn and instantly, we can start by just not being at the party. No, we don't intend to. Black male and one black male, one black female, that's a party. If a third person shows up according to the code, it becomes a constructive business meeting. We don't have parties in the traditional sense, no more, because we're not eligible. We don't know how to act. So we don't take chances on this. We don't do that roulette wheel thing about the parties. Hope that something doesn't go wrong. No. Just stop it all together. One male, one female, that's party enough. That's enough damage right there. But if a third person is present, it's not supposed to be a party. If it's 3 black people, whether it's standing on a corner or in a living room on a Sunday morning or a Saturday night, it's not supposed to be a party. It's supposed to be a business meeting with an agenda, and a constructive agenda at that. Otherwise, no 3 black people are supposed to be talking to each other about anything except that frame of reference. If it's 3 of them, that's it. Now, if it's 2, then they can kind of make silly talk or something like that, because only 2 people can only, it'll minimize damage. 2 people can be disruptive to each other and harmful to each other, but it will minimize it, because at some point 2 people have to get together anyway, but you have to have a kind of constructive agenda for that, allowing for sexual intercourse. That's how it's written in the code book, male and female. Now, but if it's a third person present for any reason, that reason should always be, this is a business meeting. And it's constructive business, even if it's no more than just talking about how to go about next Saturday painting the garage. You got 3 black people talking. All of that talk should be about something, doing something constructive, or it shouldn't be a conversation at all between any 3 black people ever. No conversation, period. It's, if what we call conversation in general. Greetings, yes, that'll be allowed. Good morning, good evening, and that's it. But anything beyond that, if you say anything beyond that, it's supposed to be constructive conversation, thought out in advance. I've been looking for you for about a week now. I've been trying to get in contact with you. Now, I have some questions to ask, or I want to talk to you about something that I've been thinking about. All constructive. 3, 4, 5, 6 black people sitting in a living room on a Saturday night. Hey, we're just not drifting in here and just sitting and looking at each other and then start pouring some drinks or snorting some coke or whatever, or just sitting here, talking about anything that happens to come up, what we call socializing. No, that is an absolute no-no. Totally. I've told people that for years. I don't participate in that type of thing. And I advocate that nobody else does ever. Based on what? Logic. What are you doing it for? Well, this is our tribal conditions, our tribal traditions and whatnot, and our customs. Your customs is what has got you where you are now, which is nowhere. You need some new customs. Otherwise, it's going to, after about 3 hours of our Saturday morning customs, we're going to have yellow tape all around this block. That's what our customs show that we get from our traditions. Not every time, but too many times. So therefore, hey, I'm not coming over and sitting in your living room on no Saturday morning for nothing. Unless I come there with a constructive plan for getting something accomplished. It's going to benefit you or me or both of us. Well, I'm not going to be there. We have nothing to say. And that's a message that should go everywhere, to every village, in Nigeria or wherever. Just sitting around the fire, watching the fire and making small talk. No. Go somewhere and do some work. And when you think of something constructive to say, pass on some constructive information, then you go looking for the other person, and only then. And as soon as the information is passed, break contact. Otherwise, it's going to lead to trouble. That's a formula that I have seen in action. I've seen both of the actions. The sitting around making small talk, that's what it's called. And the action where the person hadn't even talked to the person in 3 months. But when the person shows up, you know when that person shows up, the person is going to have something constructive to say. See, I just came by, I made it a point to get by here today. I called you and told you I was coming. Now I want to show you this paperwork on how you can go about doing what you were talking about a year ago, and how it will get just the benefits that you want. And I want to give it to you. And I got to check mark the things that you need to check into and whatnot, the procedures you need to use. It'll take you right where you need to go in order to do what you need doing. Now I'll go over it with you in detail. It'll take maybe about 10 minutes, And the person sits down and does that, and you comprehend what the person is saying, and they hand you the papers, and then they say, okay, so I'll see you later, and they go out and get in the car and they're gone. You don't know when you'll see them again, except when they do something like they just did. Now, it doesn't get no better than that. That's better than small talk ever will be. Rather than the other scene that we usually experience, yellow tape. I don't know. I was talking to him, and then he started joning and whatnot, and then Willie he started saying something about it, and I told them both to shut up. I mean, he hit me in the mouth and whatnot. And I fell over behind the sofa. Then I heard the gunshots. I don't know who. I don't even know who got shot. That's usually the result of what we call niggers getting together. Hanging out with the homies.
Wow. I have seen where that formula is.
Everybody has seen it. It's been here a little while. Now, don't talk too fast, fella. Let's go back over this again. Now, who had the gun? I don't know. I mean, I used to carry a piece myself, but I didn't have it with me then. I ain't got it with me now. Y'all search me and whatnot. I ain't got no gun. Well, I mean, well, did you know about who had a gun that was there? Well, I mean, the guys come and go and all that. 4 or 5 people. I don't even know who they were. They come there. They supposed to be friends of his. Well, his meaning who? Well, that's Alan. I mean, that's he's over there. And then that's Willie. I mean, you said Willie's dead. I mean, I don't know Willie. I mean, I know he come over here sometime. I mean, when we meeting and whatnot, when we hanging out, I wish I hadn't been here. I mean, these people crazy, man. I told Kimbo about letting all them people come around here. I mean, when they sitting up here and talking and whatnot, he said that these are all his friends. They ain't no friends of mine. I mean, I ain't even carrying no gun today, Now, what I'm saying right now can be duplicated thousands of times because it's going on somewhere even as we speak. This is Sunday morning. Somewhere that yellow tape is hanging off them trees. Wherever you find black people. Squad cars parked at angles all up and down the street. Radios crackling. White men walking around, I mean, with crayon marking off where bullets were spent cartridge shells. Sunday morning.
Yeah, that suggestion I think would be fabulous if non-white people adopted it with regards to everyone, white people and non-white people, because I've seen where non-white people not engaging in small talk with white people is also very constructive, where you're talking to white people and just getting constructive information that will help you solve your problems and be of some benefit to you. Doesn't get much better than that if you can talk to a white person and get good information.
Well, most white people don't even like to talk to black people because, just on the conversation alone. Just on that. Most white people cut you off real short. They don't have time for no random conversation. They'll mention, how the Raiders going to do and something like that. That's about it. They do not, most white men, and it's certainly not white women, have conversation with black people, period. Because they know we ain't talking about nothing that they need to hear. Now, if they think that you are a thinker and that you are a doer, that you get things done, they'll come looking for you to talk to you. But for the most part, they don't want to have no conversation. They sit next to you on the bus and whatnot. They haul out a newspaper. And then hide their face behind it, so you don't even look at them, and they definitely don't want to look at you.
I have seen that. I have.
Yeah.
Seen that. Yeah. I again, as I said, I have seen this repeatedly, and I encourage non-white people to do that. In fact, a non-white person asked me, how would you go about talking to white people about racism? And I told them, you don't have to do that if you're a victim. You can just talk to them if you're trying to get a cheap plane ticket somewhere. White people should be able to help you out with that. If you're trying to get a mortgage or anything constructive.
Oh, yeah, and when you hear them talking to each other, listen. Because in many cases, they are handing out constructive information. You pick up on things that you don't hear otherwise. But you just about know what you're going to hear from black people. Usually it's not very constructive.
Wholeheartedly agree.
Yes, you pass by 3 black people standing on the corner, and you pass by them, and the conversation is really depressing. Hey, man, I told the MF. Well, I ain't no fool. He come up getting in my face. I told him he better not do that again. That's what you hear, just in passing them. on the street.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. So he fooling around with that woman and coming over, bringing her over to my house. I mean, they sitting down there. I mean, they eating my food. I told them, don't be coming back over there no more. Yeah, I told them. How long have I been hearing that over and over again, year after year, decade after decade? The conversations are nothing but conflict or something depressing. I mean, just passing them. Just passing by the average black person.
Wow.
Just hanging out. I mean, standing there holding a conversation. Now, you go another block, and there's two white men there having a conversation, wearing hard hats. I mean, they probably, construction supervisors or something like that. See? They're saying, yeah, Brian, now on this on this deal that we got going over on this 18th Street project, now are we going to need blueprints for that? See, this, you're just passing by, but that's the kind of conversation you'll hear. Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I mean, you just pass. It's just a brief conversation, or you got on the elevator with them, the freight elevator or something. I mean, and that's what you hear on the freight elevator between two white men talking. Yeah, Brian. So you come over and pick up the blueprints now, and that's on the 18th Street project. See, and we'll get started on that right away. We can do that, in a couple of weeks. If we should have it off and running, Say, okay, I'll see you, and then he gets off there. Then black people get on. Yeah, man, I told him if, I mean, he ain't the only one got a gun. Lots of people got guns, and I definitely got 2 or 3 of them. He come over there getting in my face again like he did last Thursday. I'll show him something. Then they get off the elevator. Now, I mean, 2 different worlds altogether.
Yeah, I have unfortunately observed that too many times as a non-white person.
Yes.
Even in discussions of racism, I was able to observe some non-white people discussing racism, and they were sitting very close together, very calmly talking, no name calling, no yelling, just very courteous discussion.
Yeah.
And I cannot recall a discussion that I've had with non-white people that has been that courteous with that many people.
The white guy says, tell Ellen and the kids hello, I mean, breath of fresh air, man. Compared to what you just heard. Yeah, I told him if,
Yeah, and a huge part of our victimization, I feel, just our inability to communicate effectively with other non-white people.
Yes.
Huge problem. I just before we end the program, I did want to ask you, do you feel that under the system of white supremacy, black males, black females, not allowed to be men and women, do you feel like that really comes to the surface when black males and black females attempt to be married or have relationships, and particularly when they attempt to be fathers and mothers under the system of white supremacy?
It can't ever be that under the system of racism. They can't even be married, even when they call themselves married. But, which we'll do. I'm in that situation, wouldn't I? But that's really not what it is. You put that label on it because that's the label that goes with it. But you understand that this is just an arrangement, and that you help each other out as best you can as equals. Because one cannot talk down to the other. That's an important thing to remember. I mean, hey, we're just partners. We're just we're just helping to paddle the same boat because we're both in it. You know, you got a paddle and I got a paddle, but we ain't got no captain here. You paddling on one side, I'm paddling on the other side. That's the balance. That's the compensation. Trying to get this canoe down the river, you know, and it's plenty rough, and it needs both of us. So that's the way that works. You paddling the other on the left, and I'm paddling on the right, and trying to keep this thing upright so we don't both wind up in the water. Okay, and that's the way to look at it.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of non-white people, I guess, experience a lot of victimization in trying to deceive themselves and other non-white people that they can be a man or a woman.
No, I'm not into no. She ain't no woman. She's a girl, and I ain't no man. I'm a boy. I mean, and we trying to get this canoe down the river that the man and the woman allowed us to have, and trying to make it from one point to another under their tutelage. Because when we finally get where we're going, I mean, they're in charge, you know. So they gave us the boat in the first place and told us to come down the river on one of their projects. So, you know, that's how that works. So we just two workers working together and trying to get along and minimize conflict. But I ain't in charge of nothing. Neither is she.
Do you think it would be helpful?
You better believe it. Lay it out just like that. Because that's the truth. And the evidence shows it. See, it ain't nothing you got to preach. You can just say, where do you work? Who for? You just walked in the door saying you lost your job. Why did you lose your job? Because the folks said you ain't got no job no more. What folks? White folks. You know. Now, we got a problem, but we ain't going to turn on each other about it. Because, see, you know, you're the only one got a job. I mean, you know. And they're talking about taking that one. You know, now we're going to turn on each other. You know, what good is that going to do? We're both dependent. You got to realize that. Ain't no point in getting mad about it at each other. It ain't going to help a lot just to sit and be mad at them. I mean, in abstract. And then turn on each other because we're mad at them. You know. No. We both just get out here and try to beg for whatever it is we need. From who? From the people who got everything.
Do you feel that it's incorrect or inappropriate for a non-white person to make a request of a white person who says that they are about assisting non-white people and establishing justice? Do you feel that's incorrect or inappropriate for a non-white person to make that request at any time of a white person?
Oh, you mean ask white people for help?
Yes, sir.
Oh, absolutely. That's who can help you. You always ask them. You're nonstop. This is where everything comes from. Everything comes from the captain of the slave ship. You're on the slave ship. Everything comes from him. Ain't no point in asking the rest of the slaves. They ain't got nothing. Y'all chained together. The guy sitting down there, I mean, he got a big chunk of cornbread. You know, you don't bother him about his cornbread. You say, man, where'd you get that cornbread? I got it from the first mate when he came down here this morning while you were asleep. So when that white guy comes back down that ladder, I'm going to say, hey, you think you got another little chunk of cornbread up there? You know, right. I ain't going to be down there arguing with him about his cornbread. I mean, you know, I know where he got it. That's why I asked him, man, where'd you get that bread? See, when you was asleep, a man came down the ladder. He was going to give you some. Since you was asleep, he gave it all to me. You know. Well, when he come back down here, I ain't going to be asleep next time. You know. That's the way that works. I ain't going to get mad at you. I mean, you know, hey.
Wow. I have heard non-white people say that is incorrect. I've heard white people and non-white people say that is incorrect.
To ask white people?
Yes, that it makes
well, you can simply ask them a very logical question. If I don't get it from you, who am I going to get it from? If I don't get a job from you, who am I going to get it from? Mao Zedong? You know? Another non-white person? Ho Chi Minh? Bin Laden? I'm asking you. I'm closest to you. I'm raised by you. Now, how much more raising are you going to do? You know, I'm dependent on you. You made me that. I've never been given nothing where I could be independent of you. You do it politely, I mean, you know, but, you know, and you say it differently from the way I'm saying it, but basically that's what you're saying. You're saying if I don't get it, whatever I need from the white people who have what I need, where am I going to get it? Well, make it on your own. Well, wait a minute. On my own, what do I own? I've been told that I don't own nothing. I'm told that. Where would I get something to own something? How do I go about owning anything except to ask you? You got to even say that I own something. Somebody white. Before I can even own anything, I have to ask a white person, do I own this? You'll say, yeah, I'm giving you a piece of paper saying that you own it. I'm giving you a piece of paper. You don't own it before I give it to you, okay? You now own this house because I said so. I might come around next week and say you no longer own it because I said so. I tell you what the money is worth. I also tell you how to get the money. You get it from me. No other source. You want a job? You get it from me. You want a house? You get it from me. You want to travel down the river? You got to get my authorization. You want to drive a car? I issue you a license. You want to buy a car? It'll be on my terms. You are dependent on me. That makes me a man and makes you a boy.
I agree completely. And again, I hope more non-white people will grasp that white supremacy is responsible for this, and that's what white supremacy means. Again, white people dominating all areas of activity, controlling all aspects.
Otherwise, you can't accuse a person of being a white supremacist. You know, if he's not supreme, that'd be a false charge. See, just saying that, well, white folks don't like me, that ain't no harm. They don't like you, I mean, you know, and you doing your own thing, you don't have to ask them for nothing, so what?
Right. Yeah, as it's been my experience that many non-white people get very confused about that and thinking racism is just about white people hating.
Yeah, right. I mean, walking past and not liking you.
Right.
Well, just keep on walking past, and now you'll go, you know, stand out there all day and not like me. If it don't have nothing to do with me, you know, you can stand out there with a sign, I don't like you. That'll be your permanent position. And I got everything that I need. You know, that doesn't bother me not one bit. But see, hey, I don't like you, and I can show you that I don't like you by seeing to it that you are always in great need of everything that you need. And that the only way you can get what you need is to come and beg me. That's a different thing altogether.
Certainly. Even if I like you, I'm still in control.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah, I just feel a lot of non-white people get very confused about that both ways. And even I would say that the white people being nice, but they're still in charge. I still make all the decisions at the end of the day about what's going to happen to you and every non-white person you know, even though I'm nice to all of you. I don't call any names.
Right.
Go out and have tea and coffee and play basketball and everything, but I still make the rules worldwide.
Yes.
As I said, I see a lot of non-white people.
Yeah.
Could you please share how non-white people could get a copy of your book, The United?
Oh, they can just call me at 202-484-5461. That's 202-484-5461. And I'll tell them how to get the book.
Outstanding.
Right.
Again, Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr.,
Mm-hmm.
I will work on getting copies of the last two programs where you've been here. I'll see if I can get those to you as soon as possible. I think at this point, with the shows, about 2,000 people have heard you here at Blog Talk Radio, so hopefully more folks will be getting informed and perhaps contacting you to get a copy of your book to help replace white supremacy with justice.
All right.
Always real thankful to have you on the program to share your views with us. Very appreciative of your time. Thank you for taking some of your time out of your Sunday morning to speak with us, sir.
All right, sir, and thank you.
Thank you. We will be in touch soon.
Sure.
All right. Again, Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., fifth trip to the cows, sharing constructive information. I hope we'll be back a few hours down the road today with Dr. Joy DeGruy. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. I'll be speaking to her soon so she can correct me if I'm saying it wrong. We'll be back soon. I will take 5 minutes to clarify the laptop requests instead. People were commenting about that. I guess if I had to say one thing, it would be I'm pretty certain I am ignorant and I am retarded, but I do have the ability, I think, to problem solve if I wanted to get a laptop. I'm pretty certain I could do that. However, that's not the problem I'm trying to solve. The problem that I feel is most pressing, causing the most disturbance in my life, is the system of white supremacy. I'm trying to solve the problem of how to replace white supremacy with justice immediately. I would prefer to invest my time and energy in that problem because that is the biggest problem in my way. I'm requesting a laptop because that would be helpful in solving the problem of racism, white supremacy. I feel at this point the program I have demonstrated my efforts in replacing white supremacy with justice, and I am really making an effort to see if the work that I have done is constructive enough that people would be interested in assisting me get a computer. I'm really not interested in investing my time and energy in getting a MacBook Pro. I would prefer to invest my time and energy in doing programs that I think are constructive, writing on my blog, and anything else that would be helpful to inform non-white people about racism, white supremacy. I think my efforts since February of this year when the program started on Blog Talk Radio, I think my efforts speak for themselves. I'm very comfortable standing by my work with what I have done, and I think my efforts at this point, I think I've done enough work that I feel comfortable that if it's constructive, white people and or non-white people should be willing and able to assist me in getting a MacBook Pro before August 5th, just based on the work that I've done. Now, if that's not true, or if that's not a correct or reasonable position to take, I won't get it. No problem. I think it is, and it's my own way of gauging the constructiveness of my show. Is the show constructive enough that I can make a request and get assistance based on the work that I have done that will have a direct impact on improving my quality of life and solving my problems, because I do need a laptop to continue the program. So that is my thinking behind the request. Not that I couldn't go and even work at McDonald's for a month and have the money to purchase a MacBook Pro. I would rather take my time and energy and focus it on the program, my blog, and other efforts. And based on the work that I've done thus far, people can evaluate and see, hey, I think this is something worthwhile. Let us see if I can get that MacBook Pro. If you know of suggestions, feel free. Shoot me an email. Someone said that I should get PayPal. I have a PayPal account. It is on my blog, racism-notes.blogspot.com. Again, racism-notes.blogspot.com. I have PayPal on my blog. It's on the top right of the page. Feel free. But I explained to one of the listeners in an email, I'm not really looking, I don't really solicit for donations. I think I've mentioned that maybe one other time on the program. I appreciate the support. If you want to go to the blog and donate anything, I'm thankful. I would really just prefer to have the laptop show up so that I don't have to devote any more time and energy into that. I can just have it and continue to do the work with the program and my blog and anything else I can think of that will be constructive to working against racism, white supremacy. Excuse me. But yeah, the blog is there. The PayPal account is there if you would like to support that way. But yeah, anybody, if you have ideas or you know how I can get a MacBook Pro, feel free. Shoot me an email, untiljustice@gmail.com. One more time, untiljustice@gmail.com. Thank you, Sunra UK. She was listening to the earlier program and she tuned in. I assume she's in the UK, so it's not morning there, but she's tuning in live right now. Thank you for supporting the program. I hope everybody will be back for the afternoon program today with Dr. Joy DeGruy, author of Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. Should be very interesting. Looking forward to hearing from her. Thank you all for supporting the program. CALS, again, #1 ranked educational program at Blog Talk Radio. Thank you for your support, and we'll be back later today on Sunday, January 3rd. CALS and Gus T. Renegade signing out. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately.